Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haramai. Welcome to Pacific Storytelling. Kia ora from me, Ren, your Pacific storyteller. But today we say aloha. Aloha, the spirit of Hawaii. We at Pacific Storytelling today thought it appropriate to talk about Hawaii from an indigenous perspective. Because the islands are reopening for visitors once again. We've all been experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic, and the official advice that we have is that Hawaii, at least the island of Oahu, opens tomorrow on October the 15th. There are a few restrictions to that. You do require to present a negative COVID-19 test that is less than 72 hours old, and register on the Hawaii tourism website as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is my fantastic guests who all join us from all over the country, but with all a connection to Hawaii. So I want to introduce you to our first guest, Dr. Keao NeSmith, who is originally from the island of Kauai. He's a linguist and he's involved in the research of cultural sites around Kauai as well as around Hawaii, and has translated a number of books. So you're going to see his background. His Zoom background, he's the clever one of the bunch of us here today. Harry Potter world, I think it looks like over there. Dr. Keao has done a number of translations of popular culture books such as The Hobbit, Harry Potter and Alice in Wonderland. So aloha, welcome.
Aloha no, aloha no kaku paulua po e ohana ho aloha nana ho olo e mini aloha.
Aloha.
Secondly, I would like to introduce Kumu, Micah, Kamohoalii. Please, all of you correct me on my pronunciation if I get it wrong. We are cousins and from Aotearoa, New Zealand, but we say things sometimes a little bit differently. And Kumu Micah is an artist and designer. He focuses on traditional materials and techniques, and also a renowned hula expert. So aloha, Kumu Micah.
Aloha. Aloha kako.
And finally, and most importantly, most importantly, we have our female energy. We have Leihua Stewart. Welcome. Leihua is the CEO of the E Ala E, which is the Hawaiian Cultural Center in Arlington, Virginia. The mission of the Hawaiian Cultural Center is to preserve and perpetuate Native Hawaiian culture, education, by connecting our communities. So aloha, welcome Leihua.
Aloha mai kako.
Well, you know, we mentioned that the islands of Hawaii are reopening, and we've talked to different Polynesian indigenous communities over the previous few months about COVID and what it's meant for them on a human level, but also on a economic level as well. A lot of our islands are reliant on tourism and the money that tourism generates. So, for example, we talked to our friends from the Cook Islands, and Tua Pittman, who's a master navigator there, was talking about how the Cook Islands locked down and you had a community which went back to the old way of doing things. That you had the fisherman who went out and then he started to give away the rest of what he had to the rest of the villagers. And you had the gardeners and you had the people that would raise the animals. And so it was interesting to me to hear Tua mention that, you know, not everything to do with COVID is bad. It just took us back to a way of doing things that we did it before we were reliant on international trade and all the rest of it. And yeah, you know, look, we do live in a modern world. We have to recognize that. But you know, when I reached out to all of you I was really interested on a human level to ask the question, how are you doing? And how have you used, your cultural influence to help navigate this COVID-19 world? Kumu, can we start with you? I think you had some work that you were doing.
Yeah, I think he's completely right in the way that I think the positive of this COVID is that it allowed us to stay home a little bit and focus on being home, taking care of what's at home, being with family. As Kamohoalii, which is hula teachers, we tend to travel a lot. And so over the last few years, I've been teaching all over the world, so a lot of traveling. I do have a clothing company that also took me around the world for fashion shows and different things. And so I haven't been home so long, in such a long time. So it's nice that it brought us back to our own aina and having our hands go back in the dirt. We're home long enough now to tend to our gardens. My family actually has a farm. And so my immediate family, we have a 10-acre farm, uh, 20 by 100-foot greenhouses. We have about 60 of them, and we grow tomatoes organically. So we're the only commercial organic tomato farm in the state of Hawaii. We live on Hawaiian homelands, and so it's nice to be able to be with my family back in our farming. And I think realizing that it's so important for us to take care of each other is such a big thing. And so when you go to the store, you have the choice whether you want to buy the tomatoes that come from Mexico, California, maybe they got shipped over from wherever they may be, Thailand or wherever. It's nice that the community recognizes the local products now, and that us who are selling the local products realize that we need people to eat and we need to be okay. And if we don't have money, at least we have food. That's what most of our money goes to, is buying food, at least here in Hawaii. So started a program called Umeke'ai, kind of like a food basket program. And we started it in March, feeding the community. And really what it is still continuing on to the end of the year. It's about saving our farmers and saving our ranchers and our piggeries, because they're, when the hotel industry had completely shut down, what happens to all the food? We produce 10,000 pounds of tomatoes a week. And so my father had us just bag them and drive through our homestead and drop them all off at everybody's house. And tell Auntie here, Auntie eat, Uncle eat, just have, better than throwing them we have a place we call the tomato pit. So instead of throwing it in that pit, my phone's ringing, sorry. We just, giving everybody in the community, sorry for that, giving everybody in the community. So our program, the Umeke'ai program, we started to purchase, we got some emergency grant money. We started to purchase food from all the farmers in the community. So buying lettuce from this farmer, tomatoes from us, buying beef and pork and fish from the fishermen, and all kinds of things, putting together this, what we call an umeke'ai, or this bag or basket or bowl of food, which cost us about $75 for each one. And with our grant money, being able to subsidize the cost down to $10 a bag, and then selling it to to everybody, but specifically our Hawaiian community here. So we've been able to do these 4-week programs at a time, 300 people on the program. So every 4 weeks it re-ups, so next 300. And we've been doing this since March. So we've fed almost the entire community. And, when you're feeding Pacific or Polynesian or, Islander people, we're not going to survive off of beets, and chard. Those are fabulous to eat, but we're not going to survive off of that. We're meat eaters. We're bigger bone. We're a little bit more rounder. So my father said, we can't be giving out lettuce and tomato. People are going to be like, have to eat. Is there more to this? So in our basket, you get beef, pork, You get fish, so you get like a pound of kalua pig. You end up getting or smoked meat, and you get a bag of poi. Everyone we're like feed. There's all of our taro farmers. Feed them the poi. We need to. All of that comes in. All of your vegetables, all of your proteins. We call it the Hawaiian protein basket. So, but with all the things that's been going on in the world, I'm really, really happy at the fact and the positive outcomes of small communities getting back together and realizing what's important. I grew up in a community when I was young. In the 80s, there was 400 people in my community. Now we have about 15,000 that's in this community, and we don't know anybody anymore. But at one point in time, we were all the same family that I live in Waimea on Hawai'i Island up in the mountains. And so it's nice to be able to, I guess, hone back in our little community. And I think the community is realizing, these are the families of this town. They're giving everything of themselves to make sure that their community is taken care of. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Leihua, can I go to you and ask, how has it been being on the mainland USA, specifically on the East Coast, and you're away from home, and you still feel it's difficult to get to Hawaii? How was that for you?
Well, I've lived here on the East Coast for about 14 years. However, of course, my ohana is back home on Maui. So I'm from Ku'au, Maui, and Oahu. And so, of course, I have family on other islands, but I make it a point to go back to the Piko every year, because the longer you stay somewhere else that's not Hawaii, it changes a person. And I've seen it do that to folks, and it's very unfortunate. And however, in light of what's going on right now, it's something that, as a ohana, and I have 8 under my hale, 8 under in my pa'alama, I have 8. So we have to be protective of them, and make sure that and be protective of Hawaii by not, whatever we have here, we don't bring it back to the Piko. So even though it hurts my heart and my to not go back home, that's something that it's a sacrifice that we have to make, and it's something that we just have to be more innovative in the way in which we reach out, in the way that we connect, the way in which we engage. So it's very important that we keep all those things in mind, and because first and foremost, it's our communities that we have to, our own person. It's our ohana, the folks that are in our pa'alama, and then of course it's our communities. We can't. It's just not the best case scenario for us to be traveling back home to Hawaii when we don't know. We don't want to put people in jeopardy. So it's tough, but hey, we are a very vibrant people, and we're innovative. We're so akamai, so smart. There are different ways that we can do to make this current journey, make it valuable. And to Kumu Micah's point, it's such a beautiful way to stay home and learn about each other, talk to each other more, because we're always not home. So it's so good to get to know your kids more rather than them going gallivanting all over the place. So getting to know your aina more, so growing your food, like I'm a green thumb, raising animals. And so definitely going back to the aina, this COVID is more of an opportunity for our family more than it is like a issue or a problem. That's how we're doing it. It's more glass half full. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
I love that. I love that, how you phrase that. There's something to learn here. There's an opportunity here. And I think you're right. We talk about, as indigenous people, we have many ways of dealing with disease and different things that life may throw at us. And I want to throw it to Dr. Keao now, because I know that you did some work on rahui and traditional concepts of containment, or what's the better way of phrasing that, Keao?
Yeah, no, you nailed it because that was my immediate thought regarding all of this. Back in March, that was very interesting. I teach one class of Tahitian language over at the university at UH Manoa in Honolulu. So I have an apartment. I have a flat in not far in Honolulu, not far from campus. But I'm from Kauai, and pre-COVID days, I used to fly home for a lot of times for work and for family and for other reasons, almost once a week, which is great for me because any excuse to fly home to Kauai is, I live for that. So one of these days I will fly home and never fly away again. But and I hope that day comes soon. But it was very interesting in March when all this happened. As far as my teaching role is concerned, it happened during the week of spring break. And that was very interesting because it wasn't so devastating that it was, say, a typical Tuesday or Wednesday not on spring break. That would have been absolutely disastrous. But we did have 1 week to acclimate a bit and adjust. It wasn't a full adjustment, but the next week wasn't so devastating. On Kauai, our mayor, we got a fantastic mayor. He's a great friend of mine, Derek Kawakami. And he did what Aotearoa did. He did what New Zealand did and shut everything down immediately. And that has made life much easier for us on Kauai. Kauai people, I noticed the last time I had the chance to fly to Kauai, because again, the gates were slammed shut on Kauai a second time. But I took advantage of the time to fly home when that opportunity came back in June. And I had been away for a month and a half. So similar to Leihua, I was having real anxiety and, caffeine fits, not being able to go home. But when I did go home, I noticed how there's a striking difference in the personality of the people of Kauai compared to in Honolulu. The people are way more relaxed because the borders had been controlled. So you're talking about Rahui and Lahui. So this temporary, we call it Lahui, this kind of temporary kapu system where you make restrictions for a very specific purpose. The impact of that on Kauai has been the people are much more relaxed and much more caring and giving and concerned about each other. You guys okay? You guys okay? In my own practice in Honolulu, I live in an apartment building that's 3 stories, only 12 units. And we're a little community. We actually know each other in my apartment building in the middle of Honolulu, which is nice because I made it a point when I first lived there years ago to make myself known to the neighbors. And when this happened, immediately, and also in the grounds of my apartment building, my family also has a farm similar to Kumu Micah, and in the rural side of Oahu in Kahana Valley. And we have, one thing we do have is lots of tea leaf there. So years ago, I went there and I chopped a whole bunch of tea leaf and I went back to my Honolulu apartment and planted them. And immediately in March, the first instinct for many Hawaiians in a situation, because I'm from Kauai, we had 2 devastating hurricanes in the past. Your first thought is make laulau. So we had tons of tea leaves in our yard, and immediately I started making laulau, which is this Hawaiian food, right, with taro leaves and meat. It's really young, and you wrap it in tea leaves. So immediately I started making batches of laulau and took it around to the neighbors. I didn't know the neighbors had the same idea. So while I was giving away laulau, they're giving laulau to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I got a freezer full of laulau from my next door neighbors. And that's the Honolulu impact. Now, the other thing that I love that also touches on Lahui is in Waikiki, the fish came back. Waikiki, the fish came back. And the limu came back, the seaweed. And the scientists all these years have been reporting how devastated the ecosystems are in Waikiki because of the human impact and the suntan lotion. Will take away the people and it comes back. And you would never have had an opportunity to do that before. Even on Kauai, the impact on the ocean was immediately noticeable. The quality of the water cleared. And So there was an area, Ha'ena on Kauai, where for years the local fishermen there who live there, and it's not a big community, it's a very rural community, who are farmers and also fishermen, had been fighting for years. I mean, literally having hearings and making arguments to the local state government to shut down fishing access just to that 3 mile stretch on Ha'ena Beach. And they were successful after about 10 years or so. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And in their first year, all the fish came back there. But this is before COVID. Well, because of COVID, we're seeing that same effect everywhere. And so we see the impact right away of this type of lahui mentality and the value of it. So now we get these fish that are this fat and they're just cruising because they know nobody's going to touch them. So, you know, I mean, there isn't necessarily a fishing restriction happening, but I am saying that in the rest of the islands, the quality of the environment, it has shifted a bit. Like in China, when they first were impacted, they shut down traffic and immediately the air condition just cleared up. And the same is being seen in Hawaii with regards to the environment, the ocean in particular, but also the environment. So it's almost nasty to think, but there are times when I think to myself, you know, I kind of like this concept of global pandemic in a way, which is it's ironic, right? Because it's a very nasty thing. This coronavirus is very nasty. But at the same time, we're seeing such great effects on the economy in that regard. I can do without a pumpkin spice latte. I don't mind. I don't mind that. So, you know, that's how I think. I tend to be kind of minimalist anyway, and I like recycling. You know, recycling is a good thing. Separate your bottles and your other trash, and that had been going for some years now. Well, this is boom. This is the big scale one time. Apply these principles right away, immediately. And there are local people in Hawaii who are tired of tourism. And our local government has been scared, in my
Well, cue the lawnmower in the background. Sorry, we've got it all going on today: phone calls, lawnmowers. But hey, we're all working from home and being responsible.
That's right.
You know, Keao, I love that, and I love the you know, the breadth of experience that we have on this panel. How we've got someone who is in Hawaii but can't get to his home island. We've got someone who's on mainland USA and can't get back to Hawaii. Full stop. You know, the experience here is a really I think it offers something that a lot of people will resonate with. So thank you all for sharing that, and it's kind of nice to hear that as indigenous communities we're being quite resilient. You know, Keao, you mentioned that some people are getting tired of tourism, and tourism is reopening tomorrow, October 15th. With a test, of course, people are allowed to come back to Hawaii without quarantining. I would just be interested in hearing from all of you about your thoughts on that. And then also, you know, with the visitors returning, what is our message for them as Indigenous people about how to best engage with us, be respectful of our home, and be respectful of us? Do you have any thoughts on that? I think you might be on. Keao?
Yes, I do. I made a second attempt to go home because my mom is there. She's 85 and her mobility is, you know, she's weak. She needs a wheelchair if she travels and stuff. I had to take her to a doctor's appointment. This is just a couple weeks ago. And it's during this quarantine time. On Kauai, I mean, and just flying from Honolulu, it was traumatic. I'm traumatized now because of that one experience. I had to fly there. I didn't know what the rules were necessarily. I knew that there was the inter-island quarantine, especially for Kauai. Being from Kauai, I absolutely support how strict Kauai's rules are. They should be that strict in this time. And so I support that. But I was traumatized because of the rules. Because you're not, you're not distinguished as a Kauai person versus any other person when you're sitting on the airplane traveling. You're just a passenger, and all passengers go through the same checks when you arrive. And the same is true when I leave Los Angeles. Here I am in Los Angeles. There's no distinction on the airplane whether you're a US native citizen versus a Hawaii native. There's no distinction. When you arrive, it's the same rules that apply. And uh, but going back to the Kauai experience, the day before I flew, which was a Thursday, and Friday morning was my mom's doctor appointment. Wednesday, I went to the Honolulu airport just to ask what are the rules. I need to go to Kauai. I need to take my mom to the doctor there on Kauai. And they said the airline people said, no, there's nothing special. You just book your flight like normal. Oh, okay. So Thursday, I take my flight and get a big shock when I arrive on Kauai because there were the National Guard and the Kauai police who were there to receive the people and go through each person. And I was asked, did I get the exception? And I said, what exception? And they said, you were supposed to have gone on the website, the Kauai County government website, to get an exception to not be quarantined. Well, I also had to rent a car. I couldn't even pick up my car because I didn't have this exception. And because of that, it was traumatic for me because I knew why I was there. I had to take my mom to her doctor appointment. They said, I understand, but you have to go on the website. So I'm standing there at the airport, going on the website right now. It goes to a government office. When has the government ever answered an application that fast, that turnaround? So I had no confidence I was going to get a response or even a positive response that I could have this exception, go pick up my car rental and take my mom to the doctor. I ended up deciding it was in the afternoon. There are only 4 flights anymore every day. There used to be 20 plus flights. And I had to make a fast decision, and I made the decision to cancel. And I turned around and got back on a flight and went back to Honolulu. So I'm a bit scarred from that. We had to make arrangements for someone to go get my mom, take her to her appointment, but she had to fly to Honolulu. That's why I was going to be there so I could be with her. Anyway, long story short, but despite all that, I support it. I support Kauai's strict rules, and that's how that goes. But and then my only other thought is, here I am in Los Angeles. When I fly home to Hawaii, to Honolulu, I support what's there. I'm going to have to get tested here just like everyone else. And thanks for reminding me about going on the Hawaii tourism website. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's too much to keep on top of all of this stuff, and it is traumatizing in a way. But I throw it back to the panel about tourism reopening. I know, Kumu, Micah, that you have some experience working with the tourism board there and helping to influence some of their work. Do you have any insights that you can offer us?
Yeah, so I work in that, in the more recent years, I started to work with our Hawaii Tourism Association organizations that are here, IHVB, Island of Hawaii Visitors Bureau. For the longest time, most of my life, I've never liked tourists or tourism. None of my practices as a Native Hawaiian is dependent upon tourism. And I never thought our food was ever dependent upon tourism as well. My family's income is off of our family farm, and we supply almost the entire Kohala coastline with all of their tomatoes. And so I never thought it was dependent upon tourism until this pandemic hit. And now, everybody ran to the hills, and now we're stuck with all the food. So, but nothing that I do, I work in so many different fields and in so many different things, but I specifically specialized in teaching my own people, Native Hawaiian people. So it never mattered to me. We don't dance for tourists. We don't, I haven't been down to the hotels here in ages. And so But, in the more recent years, I had an opportunity. I was asked by Hawaii Tourism to get involved with them for years. And I said, I don't know what I would do there. I'm not when my hair is down, I look like a wild Hawaiian from the bush. I speak Hawaiian, I do things Hawaiian. My family's very Hawaiian. And so I said, I don't fit in that box of what the tourists, what a beautiful Hawaiian person would fit in that box, for an American or U.S. mainlander that's coming. I said, I think they probably would get scared if they saw me and just the way that I am. So I said, I don't know what I would do in this tourism industry. So I was so happy that years ago, they asked me to speak at one of their conventions in Honolulu, and I told them, and I tend to be very honest and blunt, and I told them that I don't care for the organization because they're trying to paint a picture of what they want this tourist to hope to see. They're hoping to get beautiful coconut trees and hula underneath the beach on the beach with a huli huli pig or some fantasy that's not Hawaii and that's not reality of who and what we are. So I had kind of like rammed them at this convention and told them that, is it that hard to just hire the actual Hawaiian? Why hire the girl with the that dyed her hair black and she's wearing coconut bras and she is from Philadelphia and she's doing some horrible dance on the beach? Why don't you just hire the Hawaiian who can just stand up and have such a powerful impact just standing there? And so and I told him, you should really change into being more authentic. If you're promoting Hawaii, don't change us into what you want us to be, because we won't. We're not gonna. We're like rocks. You're not gonna be able to move us. So better you just play with what you got, and we're what you got. So it's better if you just utilize the people and their culture and their practices and play on that and sell us for who we are, and sell Hawaii for who it is, not try to build this whole facade of what you're going to experience when you're here. And so I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. I kind of gave that speech, let it go, and I said good riddance. And then later on that year, I got a call and they were like, hey, we want to start with you since you're the one who said all of this. Can we hire you to do all of this? And I was like, oh, I just put my foot in my mouth. Okay, I guess so. So I got into all of these events and I started to work with them, and so amazing. But we were able to implement language, implement responsible tourism, implement things that, our biggest problem here on this island, on Hawaii Island, is that our off the beaten path will be off the deadly path, because if you don't know where you're going on this island, you're going to die. And so I told them, nobody tells the tourists this, they try to go climb they see lava rocks and they're like, let's get to the beach there. But you're not going to come back because those rocks are like big knives sticking up in the ground. And so I said, somehow we need to implement some responsible tourism, letting people know that if you don't see a local there, don't go there. If there's a sign that says, don't pass here, hot water, hot lava, pay attention to the signs. We didn't just put them up for decoration. That, if you don't see any Hawaiians on that side, or if you do see a Hawaiian on that side and they're doing some kind of practice, and take that as a chance for you to just observe, not go and touch them and try to, get involved. Just observe it and then, take it for what it is. Be respectful of your place and know that if you've never swam there, be mindful that the currents move. And all those kinds of things. So it really had changed the face of tourism here in Hawaii over these past years. So that's why I could say actually proudly that I started to work in the tourism industry and help them to craft things. I've been on all of these different showcases, working with different hotels and traveling with them, and I feel like I'm. It's the weirdest thing actually when I'm going into this room and it's all tourists, and all of the people selling the hotels are not necessarily native people, but they're trying to sell their rooms here and there. And then I come walking in the door, and then I just kind of feel like Santa Claus has arrived every time. So I'm able to explain to them about Hawaii, and I don't sugarcoat it. I just spit it all out, and somehow people love it. It's really worked. And I thought in today's day and age, with the access to internet and with everything at the touch of a finger, at your finger touch away on your devices and whatever it may be, more people are into history. They want to know the real things. They want to know what's real in Hawaii, and real tourism. It's so easy to Google Hawaiians, sacred places, and things will pop up on Google. So we can't sell them the pig on a spit roasting on the fire anymore. We can't sell them the pina coladas under the coconut trees. And so I'm happy that I got involved in that capacity where I was able to actually bring something very authentic into Hawaii tourism. Now, with it all being open, I mean, it was really nice that everything's been closed because, like Keao said, everything just became so pristine and beautiful and clean. Our beaches here, I never thought I would see those things again. Even the sand, we've been having problems on beaches, not on this island, but on Oahu. There's been problems where sand seems to be eroding and running away, and they have to go bring in sand. But now that nobody's there, all of a sudden the sands are back. So maybe it just didn't like the people there, so it ran away. But things are just healing. It seems like it's healing. Our air is so much more cleaner, everything about it. And so I'm a little bit nervous with tourism opening, thinking that we're going to lose all of this again. It's been such a beautiful paradise, really, being able to go to the beach and seeing 3 people on the beach and not having seen 5,000, bodies laying on the beach. And being able to go to places to do what you have to do and get out. So that's great, being able to go to the ocean, go to the mountains, pick, gather, do what you have to do and go back home, and not have to weed through all the convention of people that's there and then have to explain why you're doing what you're doing to people because they have a million questions. A little nervous that they have all these tests that's happening because I think, with this 14-day quarantine or this lifting of it all, you don't have to take the test, it seems like. You can opt not to take the test and you do a 14-day quarantine. So it seems that if you don't want to quarantine, you take the test, and when you get to your island, then you do whatever you want. If you don't want to take the test, which I heard is about $200, roughly between $150 to $200, you have to go pay to get this test done. If you don't want to, then you have to quarantine. But I thought, so if half of them don't take the test and half of them show up negative, what about the other half that we don't know? Do they just infect everybody on the plane? So all the people who was negative before getting on the plane, now everybody's positive. It's the air circulates in the plane. So I'm like, I don't know if this is the best system, but I do know that it's needed for us here, for as far as jobs and on this coastline here on Hawaii Island, the Kohala Kona coastline. Our big hotels there, most of our people, our families, work there. And so they all went back to work, they're getting ready for this whole thing. And I realized I didn't know it was that bad until I've talked to family members who we've had heart-to-heart conversations, and they tell me that we're really struggling. We're having a hard time doing this or that. We can't even get food for this or that. And I mean, it's just heart-wrenching just to think that our own family is having this thing happen.
And sorry to interrupt, but I think it's about finding that balance, because we've all been talking about we're kind of almost liking the COVID lockdown experience, but then reality kind of hits, and we need this steady stream of income. And that's why I guess I've really been loving the work that Leihua has been doing at the EALA Hawaiian Cultural Center in Virginia, going online, starting to spread the message of Hawaii online. And Leihua, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. To Kumu Keao and Kumu Micah's point, I agree. It's a shock for Kamohoalii to go back home to Hawaii and then to be, put through all the gauntlet, but totally understandable, right? Because it's to protect the community and our people. And then of course with Kumu Micah, going for that authentic stab, you've got to you know, it's the Waikiki version is a version that we cannot, it's going to be there, but you know, as Kanaka Mole, it's a responsibility for all of us to try and be more authentic in who we are, so that people are educated about who we are as a vibrant people, and not so much as a tourist type of people. So with that said, your question about Eala Hawaiian Cultural Center and what we've been doing online, we literally were doing such amazing things with events, right? Showing the vibrancy of our people through a variety of events that we were having. But now through COVID, we had to push everything online, still be able to connect, educate, and engage with our communities near and far. And the way that we do that is that we bring resources, we bring and we showcase those things to support farmers back home in Hawaii. We work with the farmers in understanding, hey, what can you provide the communities here so that we can, you know, mauliola. And one of the things is bringing kalo here, bringing ulu here, and supporting our farmers back home in Hawaii. So we like to get, you know, with Waipa on Kauai to have them, you know, we have people here who are ono for those resources, you know, for the health and well-being of our people and to feel connected. And so we work with farmers back home so that that can happen. So we've done an unboxing to support farmers there home in Hawaii, to show all the things that can be shipped over here to the East Coast, things that we typically aren't able to get. We cannot get Leihua kalo here, so or moi or any kind of, you know, kalo that is grown there in Hawaii. So we like for it to ship here. We're ono for that. Also, we also do classes, and when it comes to storytelling. So I do story reading. I did a series on story reading to support the keiki who are at home and bored. And if you want to understand what's going on in a book culturally, then that was one way to share culture. And now what we're doing is sharing the information that's coming from Ka'iwa Kilomoku. And I know, Dr. Keao, you're going to be on one of those featured sessions for Ka'iwa Kilomoku about Keala Ikahiki, which is coming up tonight at 6 p.m. So for you though, you're going to be participating, which is beautiful. So sharing those events to the communities so that they can feel connected and feel engaged is a very important way. So we do that through social media, we do that through newsletters. And if you haven't done so already, go to our website, subscribe. We send out newsletters once a month to keep you connected and engaged so that you know all of the different resources that are available for you, whether you're here on the East Coast, somewhere in the Americas, or you're back home in at the Pico. We do provide a generous amount of resources and information to help communities, because we specifically even work with, we are doing a series right now on the words just lost me. It's about Mauliola. So there's Lahui Kanaka going on back home, you know, and setting up your palama. You have to set up your palama, your sacred space, right? And the folks that are within that space. And then also you have to strengthen your palama, and you have to build your palama. So it's very important for everyone to understand. And I think that's where we educate the visitors, right? Having them be educated and be respectful to, you know, Kumu Micah's point. As long as they're being respectful toward learning and applying that learning, there shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, super excited about getting all that content out, and hopefully people will be willing to absorb it. So.
Well, I hope so. I hope that's the whole point of this, is that we're trying to get beyond the, I like how Kumu Micah phrased it, the fantasy, you know. We are the indigenous people of our islands. It is what you get, and you don't have to apologize for being who you are at home. So I agree with you, and just to sort of elaborate a little bit more, is that whole idea of the Hawaiian fantasy. How do we get beyond that? I want to go to Dr. Keao, because I'm going to struggle with the pronunciation here of the cultural site in Kauai, but Ka nei I oloma.
Kani olouma, kani olouma.
Forgive my pronunciation. I'll try to get that one right. But in my mind, that is the authentic Hawaiian experience that we should be promoting. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. It's in my view, it's one of the authentics that you can do. There isn't just one. We don't just because we're all Native Hawaiians, for example, or Aboriginal Hawaiians, doesn't necessarily mean we see the same thing in the same way necessarily, but they are equally authentic because they come from us, you know. And my family does things a bit differently than the next family, but there's a familiarity nonetheless, you know. So what we do is I work with a group of other guys from around Kauai who are interested in preserving our sacred sites around Kauai. And then there are different groups of guys because some guys feature, you know, they focus on this one sacred site. But then there's this other group that focuses on another sacred site and we collaborate. We this Saturday we'll go over there and then next Saturday they'll come over here and we help each other out, that kind of collaboration. It's really great. But this one area in particular on the south shore of Kauai, Poipu is the area. It's a very famous beach, probably one of the most famous beaches on Kauai, Poipu. And it's right there. And actually the beach traditionally is part of the complex, but now it's been cut away and made into a public park. And by the way, locals during COVID time are loving it because there are no tourists and we get to enjoy all of these features to ourselves. And even though some people come from another side of the island, we all kind of make our way to these spots and we kind of look at each other and go, because, you know, we enjoy seeing each other over there and not tourists. So even though we don't know each other, we still do that thumbs up. But Kani Olouma is within the setting, right? So normally it's swarmed by tourists, but then here are these magnificent rock walls and these fantastic features within this area. It's kind of a bit of a gulch like this, but the rock features were built using the terrain as part of its design, as part of its plan. So it kind of formulates a flat ground area that obviously is a theater, a type of theater with areas in the rise on the two sides that are viewing platforms to watch what's going on. So we believe that it's associated with Makahiki season, which is our winter months, where we have traditional games that are played, sporting type events. And then our group had 4 tiki that were commissioned to be stood up just outside because we don't want to disrupt and disturb what's inside. So it's just outside, but it's in a very visual, obvious place when you arrive by car. There it is, these 4 ki'i that we erected for the 4 primary gods, Kane, Kanaloa, Kulono. And they're lined up celestial with a celestial alignment to reflect the seasons and their purpose in the universe. And then we have interpretive signage there that kind of explains why it was set up the way it was set up. Kane itself, Kani Olouma, is the god Kane, right? That's the name of the feature. And in the middle of this this theater, amphitheater, flat, the flooring area is a spring, and that's its main feature, which is the body form of Kane himself. So it focuses on that. That's why we decided to put up the ki'i in this configuration with this in mind. There are lots of secrets that need to be brought out, but there's a lot of information we lack, and so we connect dots in order to make sense out of its configuration. But it's something we did because we feel responsible. This is our aina that we came from, was born from, and will return to, and it is that important to us. So we put all this effort, did all this work, you know, to create the funds and the grants. The government actually ceded that land to our group. by deed. We actually are now the owners of it. And so, you know, that's how important it was to even our own government. We've been lucky the past couple of administrations on Kauai to have a very supportive and culturally minded leadership in the government who believe that our traditional culture is our economic basis. And people come to Kauai specifically for that purpose. And so there was strong support that we were really happy and with that accomplishment. It's not done yet, it's going to continue.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that. It's and for me, coming from Aotearoa, New Zealand, there's a lot of words there that are I'm like, oh yep, okay, I have an equivalent. I know, I sort of know. Okay, you're talking about kane, but I think that's my tane. You know, and I heard you mention was it matali'i, which I'm thinking could be the Māori Matariki, the Māori New Year.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely that. And Kane Oluma, where it's situated, is perfect because we get a view of both the Southern Cross which is on the horizon for us. In Aotearoa is straight above, but for us, we also see the North Star, Hokupa'a. We see both at the same time, and that's a great location to witness both. So we're lucky in Hawaii that we can see Polaris, the North Star up above, and the Southern Cross below. Whereas when you fly over to Tahiti, whenever I go to Tahiti, you arrive at night. When I go home there, first thing I do all the time, if it's not raining, I go in the front yard and I just stand and look because I get a real kick out of watching the shift in the sky. And even in Tahiti, the Southern Cross is above here and you don't see the North Star. It's just below the horizon. But we're lucky in Kauai, we can see both.
That's beautiful, and I just want to share with you all that matariki. You know, what I love about culture is that it's an evolving thing, and as we as people evolve and our knowledge of past traditions is revived, and we learn more as we go on. And in Aotearoa, New Zealand, there's been a real resurgence of matariki as a celebration, and so there would be dawn ceremonies and watching the stars come up over the horizon, chanting of prayers, remembering our loved ones who passed on, and celebrating with food, or the hangi, food cooked from the air, food cooked from under the ground, food cooked from fresh water, seawater. Matariki has come into its own. And we're in the middle of our election in Aotearoa. The major party, the Labour Party, is actually proposing to make Matariki a national holiday if they win. So, these things are, I just take so much pride in the fact that the world is changing and that we're recognizing our indigenous knowledge and recognizing it and making it a holiday for everyone to understand and appreciate the uniqueness of our culture as well. Look, we're running out of time. We could talk here all day. We really could, but I know you're all very busy people. I started with a list of a lot of questions, and we've probably gone through about 3 of them. So thank you to our audience for sticking with us as we go over the Polynesian triangle here, there, and everywhere. But I want to give you all just a last remarks about anything you want to do. I want to use this as an opportunity to magnify your platform, and how can the North American visitor, that's mainly who is watching this, how can they help you in your work? Leihua, because you are here, how about we start with you?
Very quickly and simply, get on education, receive the education and receive it from sources that, not just one source, because you can never find all knowledge under one roof. Go out there and take a really good stab at all the content that's out there, and ask Kumus like Kumu Micah, Kumu Keao. They're like such beautiful folks in this community that has the knowledge to provide the education. So education's first and foremost, and respect. Those are the two things. Just be respectful of the people, of the culture, of the Aina, and yeah, that and just be respect and education. Those are the two things.
And go on to your online training. We're going to share the online events from ELA as well on our platform. Kumu, Micah, in the work that you're doing, can we help and assist you in any way?
I'm not very sure, but I think in the regards to, I think my last remarks in the regards to tourism, I think it's just as Leihua had said, respect is always the one that I think Native people would rather have, when you're traveling, being mindful of people. Here in Hawaii, we always put our ohana first. We always seem to put ourselves last after everybody's taken care of. We're the kind of family that, or the kind of people that takes care of our elders, our keiki, our everybody. And then if there's something left over, then we'll have some. But if no more, don't worry, we'll be fine, And so sometimes I wish the world was that way. And so I just hope that people are mindful when they travel and maybe get a little educated, and so they're a little bit more understanding. We are in a pandemic and times have changed. And so I think what hurts us the most as Native peoples is that we're touchy-feely, embracing kind of people. And it's so hard for us not to be able to not to be able to kiss each other, greet each other, love each other, cook for each other, just be there with each other. And so I think, that doesn't usually necessarily happen in the North America, continent as much as it does here. Everybody's family here. Literally, they're all related to each other here. And so it's challenges that we have is trying to stay away, which is the hardest thing. I feel like it breaks some of us, down inside. And so just being mindful that our whole mentality and our whole mind has completely been taken out into this different. We've never been in a pandemic before. We've never been in this kind of situation where we can't be who we are and do what we usually do. We usually feed each other, be with each other. We can't even do that. So that's a challenge, and it's making some of our locals or our natives here a little bit restless and a little wild. So I know that they don't mean to hate the tourists that will be coming, but they're struggling to find their balance, like the whole world is. Trying to find their balance in today's world and how to do what they do. Our government doesn't help the situation in the ways that they apply all of these lockdowns, and then they open up certain things. Like right now, we can't fly from island to island, but they're letting people come in. Like we can't even see our family on Maui, but they're going to be letting people in to Hawaii. So frustration. And I think as long as people have respect, they're educated and they know what's going on and they figure out things of Hawaii before they come, they'll be fine, But as far as my platforms, I work in all kinds of things, all kinds of fields. My degree's in archaeology, and so I work in that field as well. But I do own a clothing company. I am a teacher in many different things. I work in film and everything. So yeah, just supporting my people, I think, is supporting me. So
I love that. That's beautiful. Just supporting my people is supporting me. I'm going to steal that. But what we will do is we'll send out your website details to everyone as well for all of this. And that goes for all of you. Dr. Keao, any closing remarks finally?
I'd just like to say there's all kinds of support, and mahalo to Leihua for being here and for expanding the domain of Hawaiian culture to where she is and every place she goes, and same for Kumu Micah, every place he goes, then there also is, the Hawaiian culture, right? And so it's expanding every time we make those kind of contacts. So if those in anywhere in the world, not just in the US, but Canada, New Zealand, Australia, China, you can support by sending us money. Pick the nonprofit of your choice in Hawaii that supports local culture, local agriculture, uh, the preservation of our sacred sites, and go to the online URL, the websites that we have, and click the donate button. And that's what I would encourage you to do in order to feel more participatory, in order to feel more engaged with our community, because people come and go, spend a few days, holiday, and right on. I mean, we know more than anyone else how great Hawaii is. So come and enjoy and leave an impact, you know, and donate to your nonprofit of your choice in Hawaii, whether it
Beautiful.
be Kumu Palace or any of the local island group or Heiau support sites and whatnot. We need that kind of continuous help. Mahalo.
Beautiful. If you all send through a link to your charity of choice, I'd love to include that on the follow-up email. But mahalo, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm getting some fantastic feedback already through people just loving hearing about it. It's been tough, you know. We've been talking some real truths, but people seem to like that. And that gives me courage for the world that we are going into. So thank you again for your time and for your expertise and knowledge. And any way we can assist, just let us know. Mahalo. Thank you, everyone.
Mahalo nui.